Welcome to the 13th grade. My name's Elliot Schoner. Let's talk about investing in real estate, more specifically in long-term and short-term investing. Let's get to it. All right, guys, welcome back. This is going to be investing in real estate, specifically in both buy and hold and also in short-term rentals, where we're going to talk about the different ways that you can make money and some of the benefits of it and so forth. If this is the first video you're watching, this is like number 19 or 20 or something like that. Please go back and watch number one. While it might be interesting for you to learn about buy and hold real estate, it's very, very important. This course is meant to be a sort of a whole sequence. So you kind of have to learn all the other things before you get to this point. You probably, if you're watching this, you probably already knew you can invest in real estate. That's actually not the point. The point of this particular course is to teach you all the things that you need to do strategically to set yourself up on a path to make sure that you can move from nothing to something in a very short period of time and create that massive generational wealth. Okay. It is not made for piecemeal. I know it sucks to go watch all the things, but if you're going to be successful, you got to put in the work. So go put in the work. Start with lesson one. Every single lesson I'm going to tell you, go back and start with lesson one and then read through it. To be honest with you, this is probably something you should be watching, especially if you're young, probably every 6 months, every year, just kind of refreshing yourself. I still today, if you go to mendipity.com, all the books and extra podcasts and all that, I still today, every single day, I'm learning, rereading books, rereading, and I always pick up something a little bit different or a different way of looking at it. I can promise you that if I'm continuously learning and pursuing knowledge, you should definitely be doing so too. So, without further ado, again, yeah, one last disclosure. Like, again, I'm not your CPA, I'm not your accountant, I'm not your attorney. If you are going to be investing in real estate and that's the decision or the path you want to do, only you can make the determination. I don't know your personal situation. This is not financial advice. This is my journey and what I did. This is what I'll be teaching my children. Hence the idea of the book that I wrote, if I was your dad, the idea is that the young people that grow up from wealthy families learn different ways about money, making money, approaching money. This course is about giving them that in particular knowledge, even though they reach it from every single day. If I get hit by a car and they couldn't see it, technically they could go watch this and they would know everything that I did to move and to create the generational wealth that hopefully they will pick up where we left off to 10x what we did. So again, not financial advice, all educational purposes. So don't go out there and start putting all your money into any particular investment without speaking to, again, a certified financial planner, accountant, advisor, whatever. All those good things. So real estate, buy and hold real estate. It sounds just it is. We're going to buy the property and then we're going to hold the property, right? And so in the last video, we talked about the idea of wholesaling, right? And so the idea of wholesaling again is you find a distressed property that someone needs to sell it for whatever particular reason to reach money. Someone's reaching out to that person to get that deal under contract, to work out a purchase price and so forth. They may stay in it, they may rent it after they sell it, whatever. It depends on the deal. That wholesaler is then going to go to an investor like myself, and they're going to say, "Hey, I have this property. We have it under contract for this amount. You can purchase it for this amount. We think it needs this amount of renovations, and you can, if you do the renovations, we think this is what the value is going to be after the renovations." When an investor is doing something like fixing up a property, so they're going to fix it and flip it, or they're going to fix it in this case and hold it, they always want to have a nice little cushion involved in there, mainly because it makes financing a lot more easier. And if you're doing investing, you're in there to making money. Believe it or not, there are enough deals out there. There's really just not enough investors that are out there. Okay. The reason why investors oftentimes will be like, well, I want to have 10% equity. Or if you've ever sold a house before, there's people that have like lowballed you and you're like, who would ever accept that? There are people that accept those deals. So some of our investors that we work with and the ones that we learned from way, way early on, years ago, used to drive my wife crazy, but she had an investor she was buying properties for, and the person would like always just like lowball everyone, just lowball, like 10 offers like a week, just and she was like, man, this sucks. I'm earning commission off of it. So whatever, I'll just keep sending offers. And it used to drive people crazy because they're like, why are you sending this low bar offer? Like, who takes that? Well, people did take it. Today, I think that person, which is one of our mentors, lowballing people, has, I don't know, 75, 100 properties or something like that. Tons of cash flow because he's just finding the people that are willing to accept, willing to accept less, and there's enough people that are out there for whatever particular reason. So if you were wholesaling and you were fixing it up, you could sell the property, right? And so if I sold the property, let's say I made $50,000. So I purchased the property, let's say for 200, I put $50,000 in renovations in it, and then I sold it for 300, right? I made $50,000 in profit. I'm going to be taxed on that just like you would any income that you have, right? And so if that was your business, and let's say you did one a month, so 12 properties, you made $50,000 off each one of them. I mean, you have a nice sum of money there at the end of the year that Uncle Sam's going to come and take a tremendous amount of money from you, right? And that's fine. You can pay the taxes. That's not a big deal if you want to. So what some people do is they'll opt to do something called purchase or buy and hold. Buy and hold isn't always necessarily I bought something, I renovated, and then I'm going to rent it out. You can just purchase it, just fully renovated, already done, and then just buy and hold it. The idea with buy and hold real estate is if I purchase it for 200, I put $50,000 in renovations in it. I'm now in it for 250, and I decide to go rent it out. There's no capital gains there per se because I didn't sell the property. I didn't earn any money because even though there's equity in the property, there's nothing I did like I didn't sell it. So it was not income. It's basically just equity sitting in a property, right? In the same way if I bought Tesla stock for 100,000 and it went up to 200,000, I'm not paying $100,000 on the appreciation because I haven't sold it yet. That equity that's in there, the appreciation, I haven't sold it yet, right? And so what some people will do when they do renovations is they'll go in and they'll purchase the property, they'll do the renovations, and then they just keep the property and they rent it out. We're going to get more into that here in a little bit. So buy and hold is a really good way to basically avoid, have equity in property, but then you're not necessarily paying all those taxes by cashing it out. And there's other ways you can get the money out. We'll talk about here in a second. When you buy and hold a property, in most cases, what I'm saying is you're going to be signing a 12-month lease or a 24-month lease, right? So you're renting that out to a particular tenant for a certain period of time, right? But there's also, and I know we've all heard about this, there's also something called short-term rentals, okay? And short-term rentals are pretty cool because you're basically renting something out. The definition of a short-term rental is like less than 30 days, but really like less than 7 days, right? Like you're really, it's like people staying for 4 days, 5 days, or whatever. Of course, some people book a little bit longer, but it's very short periods of time. In between short-term rentals and long-term rentals, there's something called midterm. And so if short-term rentals, let's say, is under 30 days, long-term rental is really like a year to 2 years or beyond. Midterm is the stuff that's in between. And what midterm is really good for is generally people will fully furnish a property. But let's say a family is, whatever, they're cooking, they end up, I don't know, grease fire, and they end up burning the kitchen down. And the house needs extensive renovations to where they can't live in the house, right? They may need a place to go for like 3 months while they're doing the renovations, the work, and fixing it up, right? And so what a midterm is like kind of like stays for 3 months or 2 months. It could be a traveling nurse. They're going to be in town. They're going to work for 6 months for a contract and they're out, but they're not necessarily staying there for a long period of time. So there's midterm rentals. For me, if I was going to categorize the different categories and like, why would you do short term versus midterm versus long term? The long term is in most cases the least profitable as far as the amount of money that I put into it versus what I'm getting out. So my return on investment. Long term's right. It's the least. Short term is generally going to be the most profitable, okay, because it's people are coming for a short period of time. Like if someone's going to stay in your property, like we have this all the time. Like we do short-term rentals, people write to us and say, "Hey, I want to stay in there for 6 months, or I want to stay in there for 30 days. Can you give me a discount?" And the reason is why you might be willing to spend $200 a night on a property because you're just going to be there for 2 nights. You're like, oh, 400 bucks plus the cleaning and taxes or whatever, like whatever, 500 bucks for the weekend, no big deal, right? If you spent $200 for 30 days, that's 6 grand. Like that's a pretty big rental payment. And if you did that for 6 months, like it's pretty crazy. So long term, generally people are going to pay a lot less for that. Obviously, that's where you're staying, for a long period of time. Short term, you're willing to get a little bit more premium out of it. Also, why sometimes you get a better premium out of it is because you're not necessarily renting the house all the time, right? So if I have like a lake house or something, I might only rent it for, if there's 30 days in a month, I might rent it for 15 or 20 or something like that, right? Midterm can be as equally as profitable as short term, sometimes even more, just kind of depending on the location and so forth. Because a lot of those places that people that rent for a couple of months are insurance, they're corporate leases and so forth. And so if I'm doing a midterm rental, let's just say, I might have somebody rent it for February, March, April, but oftentimes we're not really sure when they're going to move out. Like in an insurance case, they might say, I want to rent it for 3 months, but I want the option to go and rent it for an additional month because the renovations could take longer. And so this is how deals kind of work. And so if they do only rent it for 3 months and then the next month, well, I mean, shoot, I'm not getting any money for that. So that's a negative month, right? So I kind of have to make up for the down months in the good months. So hopefully that makes sense to you. So because the house can be sitting for a long period of time, like a short-term rental that's not rented all the days, the monthly rent is a little bit escalated, plus it's fully furnished and so forth. I have people, investors that we work with that only do midterms and they love it. I have people that only do short terms. We have people that do mix, and we have people that only do long term. So the point is, I want you to understand what the three are. Again, if you wanted to do any one of those, each one of those is kind of like a master class on like which one you'd go to. We have a lot of this because this is our primary business. We do have a lot of it on our socials. So if you are interested in short term, long term, midterm, whatever, check out the socials. We have plenty of evaluating deals and what you should be looking for and all that kind of stuff. So, but the purpose of this course is to help you understand how you make money in real estate. And it might sound obvious to some of you. Some of you, you've probably never even thought about it. Okay. And so what most people think about when they make money off real estate is they buy a property. Let's say the mortgage is 2,000. They're going to rent it out for $3,000. They're going to make $1,000 in profit each month. If they do that for 12 months, they're going to make $12,000, right? So that's pretty self-explanatory. So cash flow, right? But that's not the only way you make money. The primary, well, I'm not going to say the primary. Let's just start with the first one. The one way that is obvious, but you may not be thinking about it right off the bat, is appreciation. Okay. And appreciation is very simple. I bought the house for 300,000. Every single year, the house kind of goes up a little bit. And so over the course of 30 years, the house has doubled or it's gone up however percent. Here's a graph kind of illustrates home values in the last 20 years. Actually, you can see from 2006 to 2012, that was a housing crash. Prices actually went down. But you can see since 2012 all the way up until 2023, houses have been steadily going up and up and up. So in this example, if you had bought a house in 2012, 10 years later, if you bought one for 150,000, 10 years later, that house is now worth 340,000, right? And so let's just talk about that, for example. A lot of our properties that we rent out, because you're generally going to get like 6 to 8% of the money, we're going to make like, let's say $500 off a property. That's a pretty good standard. Like there's my cash flow after all the expenses and whatever. It's $500. So I'm making about $6,000 a year. That $6,000 a year is great. Over the course of 10 years, it's 60 grand. And you could be thinking like, that's pretty good. Because if I had 10 of these properties, I make 600,000 over 10 years. Or if I have 6,000 and I have 10 of those properties, I'm making 60,000. If I'm making $60,000 a year, that's enough for me to actually retire because I'm gonna hit my FI number. So I'll be at $5,000 a month plus the Social Security, all these things we went over in the previous lessons. However, that house wasn't just about the cash flow that was coming in, the difference between the mortgage and the rent. You got something else called appreciation. And in this case, these are real stats. The appreciation on this particular house went from 150 to 340. Let's just say it doubled to make it easy numbers. They made $150,000 in income off just the property. So remember when I was talking to you, and this is probably, again, we're going to get into it, but remember we were talking about like how leverage was very, very important, and the Dave Ramsey method and the cash flow method, and why why leverage is important, why you must build credit, why you must be responsible early on in your career so that you can have good credit, why you must get good income so that you can go purchase your property because credit plus income equals your ability to purchase. So if I am unable to do all those things, I can't I can't buy any of the properties. Unable to do this. And this is what's so frustrating again about a lot of the things that are out there. People are like, oh, go do real estate. Well, how am I supposed to do that if I don't have any money or I don't have credit, right? So that's why we start with a building block of that. But if you went in and remember, we talked about like, so if you went in and you put down, your little bit of money on a $150,000 house. So let's say you did get into it, you had to put down 5% on this, right? So you put down your 5% of 150,000, which is going to be 15, like 60 grand or so, right? To get into this particular property. You put in your 60 grand. In 10 years, you would have made 150,000 plus the 60,000 appreciation. Now, if I had taken the same 60,000 and I had put it like an S&P index fund, I'm going to get about 8 to 10% return. That $60,000 that I put into the property, okay? So I took 60,000 and I put into an S&P index fund, VOO. Remember when we were talking about like putting money in stock? We actually just did this a couple of videos back. 6 to 8 to 10% return, that money is going to double every 10 years, right? So from 60 to 120, I will have made double my money or $60,000. And that's just historically, I'm not going to pull up the graph, but that's just historically how the stock market works. If I take the same $60,000 and I put it into a piece of property, okay, I will have made $6,000 a year because I'm making $500 a month, okay, times 12, that's $6,000 a year, times 10 years, I'm going to make $60,000. Now, believe it or not, that is the exact same number. If you're hearing them, like, well, isn't that the exact same number? What's the difference? You're correct. The reason is because when we are doing real estate deals, what we're looking for on something called a cash on cash return, which is the amount of money I have into the deal. So if I had to put 60 grand inside a real estate investment, I'm saying how much money am I making off my 60 grand? So if I make $500 a month or $6,000 a year and I got $60,000 in there, I'm earning 10% cash on cash return. Does that make sense to you? Hopefully it does. And so the reason why that's important is because when we're doing real estate deals, we are looking for like 8 to 10% cash on cash. Can't always get it. Sometimes we'll take less if we think there's going to be better benefits in other areas, but that's what we're looking for, 8 to 10%, right? Because if I'm not getting 8 to 10%, why wouldn't I just go do something else where I can get a higher return? Whenever I deploy money into investments, I'm always looking for what is the highest and best use of my money. And so where should I be putting my money to get the highest return investment? Now, so stock market, $60,000 in, 10 years later, 8 to 10% return. I'm going to have $60,000 in 10 years. $60,000 in real estate, 8 to 10 years down the road, I'm getting the same 8 to 10% cash and cash return via the cash flow, the mortgage plus the minus the rent equals cash, whatever, same exact money, same exact return on investment, right? However, I also received appreciation because the 60,000 I used leverage, which got me a hold of 150,000. And that 150,000 appreciated every single year. Not just my money, not just my cash on cash in there that I'm getting cash flow on. The house appreciated every single year. And so already you can tell by owning real estate, which is leveraged, again, Dave Ramsey would be against this, versus just cash. I'm already getting ahead because of the appreciation because the house is appreciating. And how much is the house appreciating? Is it 3 to 5, 8, 10% off of the 60? No, it's off of the value of what I purchased. So the 150 is now 300, double that. In this case, 340, double that, right? So I got 60,000 plus 150,000. I'm up 210. One investment gave me 600. The other investment gave me 210. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay. Already, that's why real estate is such a powerful tool when it comes to wealth building. The other thing people aren't necessarily thinking of is something called principal paydown. And this just eludes people all the time. So I have a mortgage of $2,000, right? And I have a rental of let's say 2,500, right? So I'm making the $500. So I'm making $500. And again, for all those that are real estate investors, I get it. Like there's expenses in there. We're just keeping the math easy, right? So I'm making the $500. So I'm making $6,000 a year, again, below 60,000. I'm going to beat this to a dead horse, right? I'm getting the appreciation of from 150 where I bought the house up to 300. So I made 150,000. But let's just say I did that over 30 years. Okay. So I just kept doing it. In the stock market, the 60,000 is going to go from zero to 60,000, and it's going to double, right? And then it's going to go double again, and it's going to double again, right? So great, fantastic. The house in itself is going to go up, and then it's going to go up just in the exact same way. But something else happens. As the house goes up in value, the mortgage depreciates, goes down, right? The 150,000 over 30 years, because the mortgage is for 30 years, is going to be zero. So again, not only am I getting the cash flow from the property, my 6 to 8 to 10% off of the actual return on investment, actually the money installed. I'm getting the appreciation because the asset that's 150 is going to be worth 300 in 10 years or whatever the appreciation is. They don't always double, but also the mortgage is also decreasing. So when the mortgage is being paid, I'm getting the mortgage paid down plus appreciation plus the cash. I'm getting all of those different ways that I'm actually accumulating money. So in 30 years, I'm getting 60,000 plus the 150 mortgage pay down because I now own that part of the 150 because the mortgage is paid off plus the appreciation. So again, very, very, very powerful moment, the principal pay down. And so it kind of looks like this. Oh, cash flow is the cash on cash returns. I mentioned this, but basically it's the total amount of money that you're putting in divide by the cash that you put into the property that's invested. Okay. It's that simple. And so the idea is what I'm looking at is saying is with you're gonna look with any investment that you do, if I put in 10,000, what am I gonna get back? If you tell me I'm gonna get a 10% return, that's 10% cash on cash. I put 1,000 in the stock market. I'm getting a 10% return. I'm getting 10% of the 1,000 I put in. If I put $1,000 in a real estate deal, the cash flow I'm getting from it is $1,000. I'm getting 10% of the cash I put in there. I don't calculate my return based on the value of the asset. I base it based on the cash that I put into it, right? You don't do it off of the debt. So hopefully that makes sense. Another way that is one that I can tell you that most people don't think about this at all, okay, unless you're in the real estate, is the immense amount of tax breaks. Now, when we talk about tax breaks, we're going to get into the whole tax section. When we talk about tax breaks, what we're not talking about is I'm a small business owner and I had to buy this laptop for my business, so I had a tax write-off. Like that's not a tax write-off. You had to spend money, and so you lost revenue. And because you lost revenue, you aren't going to be taxed on it, right? So if I made $1,000 for my business, but then I spent $1,000 on a laptop, I made $0. I guess I saved on taxes, but that's also because I made $0. That's taxes for poor people. So if you're ever listening to somebody and they're like, "Oh, you should open up an LLC so you could write things off in your taxes," like you need to have a lot of write-offs. Okay. Rich people, we don't want any write-offs. I don't want any write-offs because if I have to do write-offs, that means I'm losing money because that means I'm spending my profit. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I don't let that sink in. This is a pretty big principle. I don't want write-offs. I don't want write-offs. I don't want expenses, right? So then how? Why am I talking about tax breaks? What's the benefit of real estate taxes? Well, we're gonna get into more later. And this is where it really gets pretty awesome. And it really pisses some of those people off. They're like, you should pay your fair share. Well, you're all gonna love this, right? But there are taxes out there that you can get tax breaks for things that aren't really write-offs. I call them phantom tax breaks. I think as I coined it, a little phantom write-offs maybe. So we'll see it later. But best way to explain to you is if I was a farmer, right? What the government basically says is that if you're a farmer and you make $100,000 a year, but you need to go buy a tractor, okay, and that tractor is going to cost you, I don't know, $50,000 a year. What the government's going to say is like, listen, like you got to buy the tractor. Obviously, that was a cost of doing business, so it's a write-off. You had to go spend it. And the thing is like we're not going to charge you. We're not going to tax you because you had to go spend this money. So if you made 100,000 and you wrote the tractor off the first year, you only made 50,000. We're only going to tax you at 50,000. Now, generally, the IRS doesn't let you take everything off the first year per se. Again, we're not going to get a tax code right now. They'll go, you can write that over time. So you can take, $10,000 for 5 years, $50,000. So if you made $100,000 a year, you can write off one fifth of the tractor this year, one fifth of the tractor next year, one fifth of the tractor next year, whatever. So you can take $10,000 off your taxes. So instead of being taxed on 100,000, you're going to be taxed on only 90,000, right? Now, this also works for houses, okay? And so in general, as the tax code stands today is the day that I record this. Your house is generally depreciated. Again, talk to your tax accountant. Don't be going doing stuff just because poor old me said something. But you can write off, the house is written off at 27.5%, 27 and a half years. So I'm gonna do a calculation here. And let's say I had a $300,000 house and I divide that by 27.5 years. I can write off 10,000, if you can see this, 10,900, let's just call it $11,000 a year off my taxes. Because what the government says is like, listen, you have this asset that's a house, but in 30 years, that house is going to have depreciated. Like it's not going to be as good as it was. Like the AC is going to go out, the hot water heater is going to go out, the carpet's going to get old, like things are going to, it's going to depreciate. And it's saying like after 30 years, that house is really not going to be worth anything unless you're constantly upkeeping it, right? So the asset that itself, the housing asset, will depreciate over 27 and a half years. And you do that just like you did a tractor, where you took 50,000 divided over 5 years and took a $10,000 break. You take a $300,000 the purchase price of the house and you divide it by 27 and a half years. The value of the house, the build cost of the house, the land improvement part of the house, but by 27 and a half years, and then you'll get 11,000. Well, remember the example I just told you, like let's say we're making 500 bucks a month, right, in cash flow. 500 bucks a month times 12 is 6 grand. Well, if I make 6 grand, but my depreciation of that particular asset is 11,000, how much taxes did I pay in the 6,000? I'll let you think about that. The answer to that is zero, right? And so what I mean by that is if I made, I'm sorry, if I made $6,000, but I took a loss of $11,000 because of depreciation, actually have a loss of $5,000. So my cash flow that I made, the 6 grand that I made, paid zero taxes. And because I take $11,000 on every single part of the year, or for all 27 and a half years, I'll never technically pay taxes on the cash flow. Let that sink in for a second. And so what happens with the remainder of the 5,000 that you didn't? So again, I made 6,000. I had 11,000 write off. So I have a $5,000 negative, right? Because I was negative money because I only made six, but it cost me 11,000 in depreciation. The 5,000 I can use to offset other income that I have from other sources. So let's say we go back to the cash flow method. We've been using this example the entire course, but let's just say I needed $60,000 a year in income, right? And so if I did it through the IRS method, and let's say I had a traditional IRA and I saved up a bunch of money and I took income later on in my life, I'm going to be taxed on that. Remember, we were talking about traditional Roth IRA or even like the 401k. As I sell my stock and I take money as I take money, I'm going to be paying taxes on that later on down the road. However, if I had bought, let's say, 10 rentals over my course of my investing career, and those 10 rentals were making me $6,000 each a year, and I had 10 of them, I'd be making $60,000. But that $60,000 that I get also comes with it a depreciation of 11,000 each month. And so what I'm essentially doing is I'm getting $110,000 in depreciation off of the $60,000 in income. I'm paying zero taxes in retirement. And so that's what I was talking about earlier, how the way that you invest and how you set yourself up as you think about it, it really pays a really big and amazing dividends later on down the road. Now, what if I'm paying 60, if I'm making 6 grand a month and I'm paying zero taxes on it, am I going to have more or less money than if I was making $6,000 from a W-2 income and I had paid taxes? Well, I mean, that's easy, right? Let's say I was making $60,000 a year off cash flow and I had to pay taxes because I don't know, I was a business owner, right? And so my taxes on 60,000, let's say they were, 10%. I'm paying 6 grand a year. I want to say this slower. Let's say instead of doing real estate, I had to decide to open up a restaurant. And after all expenses and all write-offs, the net profit of that was $60,000. Uncle Sam's going to look at that and they're going to say, well, I'm going to charge you 10%. It could be a different bracket, but let's just say 10%, right? 10%. So $6,000 a year you're going to have to give to Uncle Sam to pay taxes on the $60,000 in income. Hopefully that makes sense. We probably all paid income taxes at this point in time. So I've lost $6,000 a year to the tax man. If I had taken, I'm going to say the same amount of money, but let's say instead of doing that, I bought 10 rental properties. And those 10 rental properties were paying me $6,000 a year each. And so I made $60,000 off those. Because I have the tax break via depreciation, I could potentially pay zero taxes on that 60,000. So at the same income level, one person is paying $6,000 to Uncle Sam. The other one is paying $0 to Uncle Sam. Now, that might be like, okay, well, it's just 6 grand, whatever. No, because of 6 grand, what can we do with it? I want you to do this. So we went back in a few lessons before and we said, take out an IRA 401k calculator and tell me what it would be if you put $500 a month into an IRA calculator and you did that for 25 years at 8 to 10% return. What would you have? It was like millions of dollars, right? So imagine as you were building wealth from, let's say, 20 years old all the way until you're 65. So for 45 years, you were building wealth. And every time you made money, you didn't pay taxes on any of the money. And so, like in this case, I just said to you, instead of making 60 grand a year and paying 6 grand to Uncle Sam, you paid zero taxes. And instead, you took the same $6,000 a year and you put it into an IRA. And then that IRA made an 8 to 10% return. It's like funding your IRA for free, right? And I say that because person A made 60, had to pay $6,000 of the tax. They lost that money. Person B made $60,000. They kept it all. And instead, they took the 6,000, instead of giving it to the IRS, they put it into the stock market and earned an additional 6 to 8% off that money. And so the 6%, 6,000 they save every year will double every 10 years and so on and so on and so on. And so hopefully you're starting to put this pieces together of how the actual wealthy create massive generational wealth. It's from these little nuances and from these little decisions. And it is these little decisions is what is the foundation of, again, of this entire course. And I'm going to say this over and over and over again, because this is the difference. And this is the stuff that I've not seen taught anywhere whatsoever. The way you invest, the types of investments you put in there, where the money comes from, how you earn it, the jobs you take, all of that drastically matters. It gets so much better. It's gonna be ridiculous. It gets so much better than that. But that's how you get tax breaks. So the point is, like, if I took 60,000, I put in the IRA, gonna go taxable brokerage account. It's gonna double. Great, fantastic. When I start withdraw that, I'm gonna get, taxed on that particular income, whatever it is. If I put that in real estate, I'm going to be able to depreciate that particular asset against the income. My income is going to be tax free that I get. The house is going to appreciate. It's going to double just like the same as in an IRA. I'm also going to, an appreciation, we get that. So I'm also going to get the mortgage pay down. So my mortgage is being paid off for me, whatever the value of the house is. I'm going to get appreciation in the property, and I'm going to get cash flow, and I'm going to get the taxes. That, of course, gets even larger. Forget 150,000 or 300,000. What if you bought a $700,000 property and it went to 1.4 and it was paid down? The 700,000 was paid down. It can get massively, massively large scale. Let's talk about some other scenarios. Let's talk about typical deal in real estate. So we kind of alluded to this a little bit. So a $300,000 house, and by God, I don't know where you buy a house like this for $300,000 anywhere. This is probably more like a half. Actually, this is very similar to a house I purchased for 500,000. Actually, it's funny enough. I used to live in a place called Johns Creek, Georgia, and I bought this little house I just drove by all the time. And the house again, I purchased it when it's funny. The builder, it was like this last house. They had closed on it. The person backed out, couldn't get financing or something. So they had this house and they just like they were closed shop. Like the whole community was done. Everyone was moved out. The realtor was like, I can't believe these people backed out, whatever. Drove by it, right place, right time. They're like, we just want to get rid of it, whatever. Got into it for 490. We end up selling that property to buy our primary now because we at the time we needed that down payment. I wanted to rent it out. We didn't rent it out because we weren't going to be able to do a depreciation on that. We'll get into that later in a later lesson. And then we liked the money because we could take that money and buy another real estate property that would allow us the depreciation, which we thought was a good idea at the time. But through COVID and whatever, in like 3 years, that property went from 490 to about $1 million. So we lost out on just stupid amounts of money. But anyway, it was almost exactly what the house looks like. Anyway, so a typical housing price, let's just forget the picture. Let's just say you're purchasing a house for $300,000. Okay. To close on that property, guys, give or take these numbers. I'm using these numbers because if I use the exact numbers, it wouldn't make there's no reason to. You get the point, right? So don't be like, oh, you got to use more for that, whatever. If you were gonna buy like let's say a property, you're gonna put 90,000, you're gonna put 3% down, so 90,000, right? You would get a 3% appreciation off that every single year. You're gonna get like an 8% cash flow, so $600. So just what I said to you. And you're going to get the 3% mortgage paydown. Where the 3% mortgage paydown comes from is on a 30-year mortgage. If you pay down 3% every single year, that's going to be 99%. So it's going to be 100% paid off. So it's not exactly like that, but you get the point. Appreciation is 3%. Good rule of thumb is 3 to 5%. However, there are periods like we had through COVID. I do believe we're about to go through another one here in another couple of years. I don't want to get into that because I don't want to make a future investment statement and then have people be like, "Oh, I did this because you said I was going to get a great return. I didn't." So I'll just say I think it's going to something like that's going to happen again. But a good rule of thumb is like 3 to 5% a year in appreciation. So you're getting the appreciation, you're getting the cash flow. Again, it could be 6 to 8%, 8 to 10%, depends on how you do deals, where you invest. There's whole sections on our website. You could take a less cash flow, but you're gonna have higher appreciation. You could have a high appreciation, but less cash flow, or more cash flow, less appreciation. Just depends on how you want to invest and where you want to invest. Okay. So, sorry guys, losing my breath here. So, we kind of talked about this, but it looks like this. So, $300,000 sales price over time. Look, I put $85,000 to close, so it was already cheaper. So let's say it's more to close. Let's say it's $105,000 to close, because technically you're probably going to put down 5%. So maybe it's 150,000, somewhere in there. It depends on how you're buying it. First home, second home, whatever. Investment home, you can have 0%. There's things out there. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in the channel. But 300,000, the point is it's going to end up being worth a lot more. 600,000, I doubled it. It could go up triple. It's really hard for me to tell you. Every area is different. Every investment's different. Again, it's just different. The house is going to be paid off by the rental income, So the renter's giving you rental income while the home gains in value. So that's just what we talked about. So the 300,000 ends up appreciating to 600,000, and the 300,000 is being paid off by the actual renter through the rental payments. You're going to get a 3% cash flow or 3% appreciation, which is where it goes from 300 to 600. You're getting 8% cash flow and a 3% mortgage pay down. While you obtain 8% cash on cash return year one, the rental rate increases, but your operating cost does not. You make more money as the years pass. Yes, great point. Such a smart person to put these slides in here. So I didn't talk about that. This is awesome. So this is what a lot of people don't think about this. I actually didn't think about this either. It took me a couple of years, and then even though we were raising rents and things like that, it never really clicked, right? So if I do a deal today and my mortgage rate is 4%, let's say. Well, rates today are 7, but let's just say I do a deal. Rates are 4%, 300,000. Let's say my mortgage payment is 2 grand. That 2 grand, taxes could go up, insurance could go up based on home value. It's pretty nominal, but the rental rate continues to go up. So 2,000 this year might be 2050 next year, might be 2100 the following year, 2150 the next year. Maybe I just increment it up $50 every year, right? But over a couple of years, 5 years, 6 years, that $2,000 could be 3,000. However, my mortgage payment's probably still going to be like 2 grand, 2100, 2200, whatever. Go up a little bit because again, insurance and taxes, but it kind of stays the same. The mortgage stays the same as long as they keep the same interest rates and whatever, but the rates go up. And so what I mean by that is if my costs are the same, but my rental rates go up, I'm making more money each month off cash flow. So if I take the more money and I divide it into my original cash on cash return, while I could be getting, let's say, 6% cash on cash right now, I could be getting 12 or 13% in a few years down the road, right? And so sometimes when you're investing in real estate, you might go into it and go, well, I'm going to do this. I think just to get someone in, I'm going to do a 6% cash on cash just to get someone in there. But as all these things are building up, they're building a new whatever factory over here. That's going to bring in more jobs. They're putting the shopping plaza over there. Anyway, the area is going to get more desirable in real estate, location, location, location. I can start to move that rate. I can start to move that rent up drastically. There's some properties that we started off at 1,500, we're at 2,100 in like a couple of years, right? Just because the whole area blew up, all the rents went up. Not that we raised it on the tenant. The tenant moved out. We got a new tenant, and I'm not going to charge under market rent, right? So rents can go up. So what could have been an 8% return again can be a 12% return, which is just absolutely crazy. Smart guy wrote these slides. 300,000 turns into 600,000. Again, 85,000 to close, 150 to close. Doesn't really matter how much you put down to close. Let's not focus on that. The house is paid off with the rental income. So the mortgage payment is 2,000. I'm charging 2,500 for rent. 2,000 of that rent goes to paying off the mortgage. $500 goes in my pocket as cash flow. Okay. However, as the home goes up in value, right? So from 300 to 6,000, 600,000 over 30 years, hopefully you understand that I will have an asset that's worth 600,000 in this example, and I have no payment on it, right? And so what is 600,000 in equity doing sitting in a property? That's called dead money. I coined that phrase, I believe, unless I heard it and forgot about it, but I coined that phrase. That's money that's earning no return on investment. Ladies and gentlemen, equity in a, that's why it's so stupid to pay off a property. I mean, you have to be just completely financially illiterate, or you might want to do it just because it makes you feel good, which is whatever. But $600,000 in a property that's earning no return on investment, it's just sitting there, is like, it's mind-boggling. It's like taking $600,000 of money you earn and just putting it in the mattress. Why would you do that when you can earn 8 to 10% return off of it, right? And so what real estate investors do is about 5 to 10 years in, let's say I buy a property for 300,000, it might be worth like 450 later on down the road, right? And so what they'll do is they'll go in and they'll say, you know what? I have some equity in that property. I'm going to take out a home equity line, or I'm going to do a refinance in that property and pull the cash out, given that the interest rates are better. And I'm going to use that equity that I just earned because now the house has gone up in value. I've done nothing for it other than just own the asset. And I use that 150,000, like in the case where the property went from 300 to 450. I take that $150,000 and I go use that to buy another asset. And that's when your assets buy you assets. And I think we talked about that in the Grant Cardone method, that it's like instead of compounding interest, it's like compounding assets. And so you buy a property, and not only is the cash flow making you money, but the appreciation is going there. And then you take the equity out of that house, and then you actually go buy another property with that, without money that you had to save up. So your house equity for doing nothing other than owning it allowed you to go buy another property. So now you have two properties that are appreciating, and you repeat that process and you repeat that process. Okay. Typical deal. One is the equity buys you property. The second one is the cash flow buys your property. So this one takes you a little longer. Got an asset, 300,000, $100,000 down. I'm getting 8% cash on cash, $500 a month, $6,000 a year. In, let's say, 10 years, that house, if I just took that cash flow and I just kept saving it and saving it, saving it. Matter if I took 60,000, I put it into an IRA, I'm not earning any money off of it. So if I take 60,000, I put it into a real estate investment and I'm getting $500 a month, I don't have to go spend that, right? I could just save it, right? Or I could put that, better yet, into a stock market that also earn money. The point is, if I do that over a long period of time, at a certain point in time, over 10 years, if I just put it under a mattress, I'd have 60 grand. If I put it into something that was giving me a return, I might have 80 to 100,000. So over the course of 10 years or so, my cash flow that I'm getting from that property can buy you another property. So just for the sake of simple math, I buy a property for 300,000. Over 10 years, right? I get $60,000 in cash flow, but I took the $60,000 in cash flow and I put it in a brokerage account and I got 8 to 10% return off of that. And so that money, hypothetically, without doing the math, let's say instead of 60,000, I had 100 grand because it did its thing, right? It grew, right? At the same time, the $300,000 asset appreciated 150,000. The 150,000, I went to the bank, I took out the 150,000 and now I had 150,000. In 10 years' time, I made 60 grand that turned into 100. I took the 100,000, I go buy a second house. I take the equity out, and I go buy a third house. So in 10 years, my one house just had babies. Okay. And now I have three houses. Those three houses are going to go up in value and do the exact same thing. The one house that I just purchased, again, I took the cash flow. I bought that one for 300,000 in 10 years. That's going to go up to 450. It's going to give me cash flow. It's going to have two babies. The original house that I was at 450, it's going to continue to go up in value. It's going to get equity. It's going to give me another 60,000. I have that invested. It's going to have two babies. The one I bought with the equity in the property, it's going to get cash flow. That cash flow is going to go buy a house. It's going to appreciate. It's going to have some babies. Okay. And so the point is, those particular properties are going to double, and then that doubles and that doubles. So just by starting off one property, although you may not get a whole lot of cycles through it because you're talking about 10, 12 years to do that practice, if you stick with it, and you follow the principles of the wealthy and you don't spend money before you have it because you're going to continue to grow. So you don't take out the equity and go buy a boat with it. You don't take the cash flow and get Uber Eats and buy a new Rolex and all that. And you just keep saving and letting that snowball work. Remember in the beginning slides where we're pushing that rock up, and we're pushing and we're pushing. And I'm like, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. And then or remember the curve when it was curving up and I'm like, oh, then people give up there. Some people will get their first rental, they get a little bit of cash flow, then they go spend it. And then all of a sudden, oh, something happens. The AC goes out. I can't fix it, whatever. They lose the house. No, we are smart. We understand we're going to stay in the principles. Not only are we going to buy properties, we're going to buy properties with the idea of them multiplying and the properties buying properties and just gaining in more and more and more and more, right? We understand the whole picture. That's what we're doing. That's real estate. That's how powerful it is. So imagine so imagine instead of $60,000 into an IRA and it doubling every 10 years or so because it's getting 6 to 8% return, in 10 years, your house bought you two more houses. And now you have $500 here, $500 here, $500 here. And now you have $1,500 a month coming in and three houses all gaining 3 to 5% interest, all 3 to 5% in appreciation each year because they could just continue to keep appreciating and all getting a 3 and 5% appreciation decrease, all while because they're all being depreciated via the tax code, they're all that cash flow that you do receive is completely tax free. That's how you become wealthier. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, it gets so much better, so much better. Okay, so the Burr method. So some of you may have heard this or seen this, but this flows directly into um, the real estate. So remember when I was talking about earlier? I love how all this stuff connects. It just gets me excited. Remember I was telling you about how if you could if you were smart, you would start up by wholesaling, and if you could wholesale your business, you could become god awful wealthy simply because you could find your own deals. Well, this is what I'm talking about. However, you don't have to do this. You could still buy from wholesalers, still do this method. However, if you could save on the wholesaler and you could find your own deals, man, does it get nice. Burr method. The idea is to find a property like the one we described in our fix and flip wholesaling video before this one, is to find a property that's potentially distressed that needs some work on it. You buy that property, say for 175,000 or 200,000. You may put $50,000 into it, so the after renovation value would be 300,000. Oh, look, I have those numbers right there. Would be 300,000 after the renovations. You would have enough profit left over. Like in this case, I think the example I used before was like 50 grand. So bought it for two, put 50 into it, sold it for three, made 50 grand. So in this case, the sales price, the price that we accumulated for was 180,000. The after rehab value was 300. We need to do $45,000 in renovations. Right now, buy BRRR stands for buy, renovate, so fix it up inside, um, rent it out after it's renovated, refinance, and then I think it's repeat. So it's BRRR. Okay. And so we buy the property for 180,000 from a wholesaler, or we find it ourselves because we're going to learn how to wholesale. We do the renovations. We put $45,000 into it. If I did that 180 plus 45,000 example, we're in it for 225. Even though I'm in it for 225, I can then put a renter in it. Okay. Let's say I rent it out for $2,000. I can go to the bank and say, "Hey bank, I have a property. I'm in it for 225. I have a renter in it. They've been paying me now for 3 or 4 months. Here's the lease. I would like to do a cash out refinance." And what the bank will do, depending on the bank, depending on your credit, how long you've been doing this, your investment history, your relationship with the bank. I think we talked about that earlier as well. They will give you between 90% and 70% appreciation, 90% value of that property. So on 300,000, you could go to the bank and they'll say, "We'll give you 90% loan to value." So they will allow you to take out 270,000. If you had a $300,000 property and they were only going to give you 70% loan to value, that's 210,000. So you could see where it is. So if you were at 80%, I think that's how I did this calculation here. 80% is pretty typical. 80% of loan to value is 240,000. So exactly. So here we're at 225. So we're at like 75%. Okay. So what that means is I bought it for 180. I did $45,000 in renovations. I'm in it for 180 plus 45. So I'm in it for 225. I go to the bank. I say, "Well, I want to do cash out refinance." The bank wants to ensure that I have at least 25% equity in the property in the scenario. They do that because rental properties are a higher risk. And if there's a default on the loan, they can foreclose on the property. And the 25% equity means they can get rid of that property really easily and still get their 225 back. Okay. They will give me $240,000, okay, out of it, okay, based on the 80% value that I just said. So let's say they do that. I'm in it for 225. They're going to give me 240. So I made $15,000 on this deal, right? Inside the deal, there's a renter, right? That's paying me how much? $2,000, right? Let's say the mortgage payment is 1,500. What am I getting? I'm getting cash flow. In this case, it says 600, but I'm getting the 3% appreciation in the house. The house is going to appreciate just like I said to you. I'm going to get the cash flow of the particular property. I'm going to get the mortgage pay down because I refinanced the property. So now I have a mortgage on it. I'm going to get the mortgage pay down. How much money do I have invested in the property? $0, folks. Did I put $45,000 into it? Mm-hmm. Did I have to buy the property for 180,000? Mm-hmm. But so I'm in it for 225, aren't I? Nope. The bank's in it for 225. I put up the money. I bought the house, I renovated, but then I went and did the cash out refinance. So I got my money back. In this case, I got 240 back, not 225. So I got paid $15,000 to do that deal. Does that make sense? Maybe I can use that to pay a wholesaler to get the next one. I have a renter in there. The renter, because I've rented it out for what I knew the mortgage was going to be, because I knew that before I even went into the deal. So I'm making my 6 to 8% return on the house. I'm still getting the appreciation because the house is just like any other deal. And I'm still going to have them pay down that new mortgage that I just got. So I'm getting all of those things, but I have $0 invested into it. So in the previous example, I was like, well, if you put $60,000 to an IRA and it's going to double 68% return, it's much better to put $60,000 in a home that's going to also get you the same $60,000 a year because it's going to appreciate, right? Every 10 years, you're going to get $60,000. So you're still getting that initial cash on cash return. Again, if you're not following, go back and watch this video again. But I'm also going to get depreciation and I'm also going to get the depreciation. But here's the thing, I'm also getting a taxes break. Remember when I told you that the asset divided by 27 and a half years, I'm going to get taxes? So I'm getting the $11,000 depreciation off the income that I got. So I have a tax-free cash flow. In this case, it's 7,200, but in the previous example, 6 grand. It doesn't matter what it is. The cash that I'm getting from the rental is actually all tax-free. So I acquired an asset in my name that is purchased maybe like in this case 300,000 in value that's going to double over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's going to go to 600,000, right? I put $0 into it. I'm getting cash flow every single month that I'm paying zero taxes on because it's depreciated. That's amazing, folks. That's crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. That's how the rich continue to get richer. How many deals can you do in real estate where you had zero money down? If you had to put $0 into it, how many deals could you do? Their answer to that, folks, is unlimited amount. How many loans can you get in your name as cash out refinance? Unlimited amount. The reason why people don't do this is you might be thinking to yourself, there's no way this is possible. This sounds like a scam. This sounds like you're taking advantage of somebody. No, the reason why we don't do this is because people aren't educated. They don't realize it. They don't understand the tax code. They don't understand lending. They don't understand acquiring property. They don't understand that you can actually buy properties for less. They don't want to take the risk. They don't want to put in the hard work. It's hard work doing wholesaling. It could take you a year to get your first deal, calling 300 times every single day. You could go do renovations for a property and fail miserably at it and lose a tremendous amount of money. You could buy a property and then the renter could stop paying rent. There's risk for everything. Most people sit back and go, that sounds too good to be true. That can't happen. I can assure you it happens every day because this is what I do every single day. This is what our investors do every single day. We currently right now have property management for 300 properties, all with people doing this. Can you get every property in the BRRRR method? No, not necessarily. These are hard deals to find. I mean, you got to find a deal of somebody that's willing to take the property and take it for less. Then you got to do the renovations, whatever. If you don't have the 180 to buy the property, or the 45,000, you can borrow that money. There's hard money lenders. Is the money expensive? You're damn right it is. It's like 2 points just to close and then 10% on the money. It's expensive money. But if you know what you're doing because you've crawled, walked, and then ran, it can be done. If you're doing a project like this, like a BRRRR method, you know how I recommend starting? You got it, wholesaling. And when you do wholesaling, when you're actually wholesaling to those investors, ask the investors, say, hey, when you're doing your project, do you mind if I could just kind of come along and just kind of see how you renovate it? I love to see when we sell something to somebody, like what it looks like. And then you go in there in a non sort of inquisitive type of way where you're asking tons of questions and be like, man, that's cool. How much did it cost you to do this kitchen? That's crazy. What made you want to do this kitchen versus just leaving it? And you slowly build relationships over time. And then you begin to know. So by the time you've closed enough of your business doing wholesaling, that you've gone and go like, yeah, I know how which houses, because I remember when I wholesaled this guy said it was going to be about that much. Oh, and this is the trade, and I met his trades that he uses, and they said they would help me out if I ever did a deal. And so you learn slowly over time. So many people in the industry want to just be like, oh, I'm going to fix and flip. I'm going to get a bunch of credit cards. No, you're going to lose your money. Just like if you're going to do day trading, oh, I'm going to just YOLO into some, meme stock, you're going to lose all your money. Okay. Crawl, walk, run. But the point is that with doing deals where you're taking your money and you're thinking about what's the highest best use, and you're doing it with the idea of taxes in mind, maybe getting it cash free, and you're doing it and you're building things that both appreciate how the mortgage gets paid down, you're multiple ways. That's how you generate revenue, and that's how you can be a physician and not necessarily make a whole lot of money, or make a lot of money, but not necessarily be building wealth as much as somebody that's maybe is a plumber that is able to build wealth. That's why you can be a high schooler making, 16, $17, 16, 17 years old, and, be generating crazy amounts of wealth doing wholesaling, and then eventually doing your own deals, when other people can be like, you know what, I'm going to go and be a computer engineer and go to school for 5 years and rack up a $250,000 debt. Your choices matter. So again, the purpose of this course is, and I keep saying it over and over and over again because I need it to sink in. It's not about get rich quick scheme. It's not about, oh, go flip properties. This is one of things that we've talked about, and that we're still talking more. I guess it it still gets better. It's still like you haven't gotten into the actually how the build wealth yet. But there are vehicles and things that are out there that you can do that you can make tremendous amount of money. You will never be able to do that if you make bad decisions in the beginning, right? And so if you go to high school and you decide you don't ever want to work, you never get world skills, you're never going to hack at wholesaling. Because the people that you're going to talk to expect someone that knows information. You're going to be able to have a conversation with people, interact with people, or whatever. You need to have experience, work experience, right? Um, if you go to college and you take out a credit card and you max it out, and you all of a sudden you have a 540 credit score in your mid 20s, you ain't gonna be doing this because ain't no lender's gonna give you any loans for a fix and flip when it's your first deal when you have a 540 credit score and no income, right? If you go and you get a nice solid job, and maybe in high school, instead of going and working for McDonald's, you try to find a plumber and you go, hey man, can I just come hang out with you on the weekends and I'll just work for free? Because you're not thinking about, oh, I need money to buy the next PlayStation, next video game, or a new iPhone, or take this girl out. I'm trying to learn a skill. I'm trying to learn a skill like plumbing, electricity, AC, where right, carpentry. I'm trying to learn that because my game plan, because I studied and I know the whole plan where I'm trying to go to. My game plan is I'm gonna be doing fix and flips. As soon as I turn 18, I can buy my own house. I'm gonna be buying my houses, and I'll be damned if I can't go in there and do the plumbing myself and the electrical myself, especially early on, so I can maximize that profit, so I can go do that again. You damn right you're gonna want to. So you end up choosing. What I'm saying to you is wealthy kids and wealthy people end up choosing jobs and doing things that people that don't grow up from wealthy kids don't do, right? And I'm not talking about the people that are like in yachts and stuff like that. Those kids are never going to go be plumbers. I'm talking about people that have gone from nothing to something. And this is why it's important you learn from someone like myself versus like if Elon Musk was trying to teach you something, like it's just completely different, right? He'll be like, oh no, go start up an app. Here's $100 million to go do that for my kid. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about the average Main Street person. How do you generate wealth? How do you create and get wealthy? You got to develop a skill. That skill has to be marketable so that you can either save yourself money, so you don't have to pay someone else for that skill, or so that you can generate money, so then you can go deploy that money into things that even make you more money, right? If you know the entire pathway, which again, what this course is about, if you know the entire pathway of like, okay, yep, I need to get some really good skills in high school, and I need to develop these things, and I need to develop a nice personal brand and understand social media and understand marketing, and I need to get a jobs and things that are centered around whatever I want to do, whether it be own a restaurant or whatever. I need to go to those types of fields so I get that experience. So by the time I go into college and I have somebody to deploy, I have 5 or 6, 7 years of experience, and I can save myself. And I'm going to start getting credit even at 16 with as a co-signer as an authorized user on my parents' card, and I'm gonna get a little card, even if it's a beater card, just small little loan payments. I can start paying on that, and a little credit card. I'm gonna max that out. I'm gonna pay that off, and I'm gonna do that. So by the time I'm 25 and I graduate, let's say college with a degree in who gives a crap, right? And I'm making 80, $90,000 a year. I can then deploy that money into things by using my excellent credit plus that income. And when I go deploy that money into something, into real estate, I'm going to do it in a way that's going to ensure that in 5, 10, 15 years from later, I no longer have to work anymore. Guys, it gets so much better. We're just at the tip of the iceberg. Just at the tip of the iceberg. When you're 25 and you have income, what property should you be buying the first time? What business should you be going in? And why do you need to go into that business? And if you didn't have to pay taxes, and I'm talking about making $1 million a year instead of paying $400,000 in taxes, if you paid zero, because you did the things that the IRS told you to do and follow the tax code to the T, no loopholes, no cheats, no what, literally by the rule book, exactly the way that IRS wants you to do it, how much more beneficial would you be? Stacks on stacks on stacks of cash, assets on top of assets on top of assets. There's no better way. There's no better way than just taking a lump of money and putting in a stock return and waiting for an IRA until you're 65 so you can downsize and die, or buy assets that compound over time, that give you amazing cash flow, that you end up paying a little bit of taxes on the income that you do. And then if you plan correctly, potentially you can leave that all to your children, your heirs, absolutely tax free. It's amazing. It's all legal, and it's exactly what the government and the IRS wants you to do. We're going to get more into it. The next lesson is a couple of things we're going to talk about: good, bad debt versus investments. We're going to get right into the tax code. That one's going to drive you crazy. And then we're done. And then we're done. So we're not done, but like then we're done with like, okay, here's the roadmap. Then we're going to be doing all the sexy things, which is probably what you wanted this course to be, which is we do this investment. This is what happened. This is what it equals. You do that investment. This is what it equals. And then I'm going to take it. I'm going to put it all together, and I'm going to say, start off and go like, if I had $100, this is what I would do to build. And it probably will blow your mind, but hopefully that capstone part of it will get your mind to be thinking and going, okay, yep, I see how that can add up. Yep, I see what he did there. I see how he added up. Oh, I see how he did this. Okay, and you can follow that blueprint. So until next time, if you are getting confused or this is becoming like so much information, guys, go back go back and watch the videos. I would highly encourage you to one, you could join our community. You can send us messages. You can agree question other people in the community on middippy.com. Look at the expanded content. Look at the books we recommend. Look at the podcasts we recommend. I want you to be completely immersed in this. Don't feel bad to reach out, but also if you notice in this course, I'm going forward and then kind of going back and then forward and then back and then forward. That's kind of what I want you to do. We've done credit, we've done leverage, we're doing a little bit of investing. We're going to do taxes next, but I want you to go back and like kind of rewatch all of that because I think it's going to make more sense to you watching it back the second time or the third time because you're going to be like, oh, that's how that worked. Oh, I see why I needed that for this and that or whatever. That's the missing part that everyone else misses. That's the important part. Again, till next time, we'll keep it short on this video.